All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Green Eyed Ambition platform, where we talk about everything that involves the business and the hospitality industry. My name is Jessie. I am passionate about seeing other entrepreneurs in the food and event space having the success that they're desiring in their business. I am super excited about having Ariel here today with the Food Truck Scholar. When I found out about her through Facebook in one of the common groups, I think I sent you a message immediately in friend request, like, we have to talk. I knew that I had to have her on this platform because I find that this is a really great avenue for people to take their either wanting to test out possibly having a brick and mortar or just really keeping it as a food truck. But I do want to read a little bit of your bio just so that people can understand a little bit more about you. So I have here that Ariel is the founder of the Food Truck Scholar and the host of his flagship podcast. She's a PhD candidate that has traveled the country studying the food truck industry and meeting food truck and trailer owners with good food and great stories. I just, I love that. Thank you so very much for coming to this platform,
Well, thank
Ariel.
you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would love to know, like, what got you into doing this?
I tell everybody the same story. It was because your girl was hungry, you know. And a lot of people are like, "Are you serious?" But like, yeah, no, it's true. I've always been a foodie at heart, So I'm sometimes I'm surprised that I got into the academic side of it and the podcasting side. But when I look at my childhood, I really shouldn't have been because I was always somebody that was both a picky eater, but also always trying new food and different stuff. So it's kind of weird. But when I got to West Lafayette, Indiana, that's where Purdue is, and I'm a PhD student at Purdue. The food scene was totally different from what I was used to back home in Birmingham, Alabama, and even different from Nashville, Tennessee, where I did my master's degree at Vanderbilt. And I'm homesick because everybody back home in Birmingham is posting new food truck plates, and it looks all decadent and seasoned and lovely. And up here, I'm like, y'all, Lord, we ain't even got a Popeyes. Like, we finally about to get a Popeyes next year. That's how serious this is. So we going through, and it became this thing of like, okay, why are these black-owned food trucks popping up in Birmingham when I leave? Like, I felt disrespected, and so I'm just being honest. I felt disrespected. I was angry. I was hungry and angry. It was a stressful time, and I just started searching about the rise of black food trucks. Was it tied to gentrification at all? And any of the academic stuff I was finding was not talking about black food trucks and gentrification or really black food trucks at all. So it became just a personal curiosity. But then your girl had to write her midterm. Her midterm was coming up and she wrote nothing. And so the professor was like, hey, can all y'all just write something about what's on your mind? I said, okay, is this? So wrote it, had the audacity to get an A on the paper, and he was like, you know what? You need to think
Wow.
about X, Y, and Z, and think about this, and think about that. And in the midst of all of his comments, to be honest, I can't even remember what most of his comments were. I just heard him say, this is a good idea, and you gave me an A on this, and I'm going to eat my way to a PhD. And so about 5 years later, that's what I've done.
Wow. So you didn't even come from the industry. You were just someone that admired what was going on.
No, like, and I'm very quick to tell people that because I get that question a lot. It's like, do you own a food truck? No, and some people ask me, will I ever own a food truck? Probably. If I did, what would it be? It'd probably be a dessert truck because I love to bake. But I come from this from the standpoint of literally being a food truck foodie, and that's kind of how I approach my work.
And you know what? I don't think anything is wrong with that, to be very honest. A little bit of background for you about me. I went to school for culinary up until college. So I was the kid that was in all the types of programs because everyone thought that I would be a chef. But even though I got accepted into like Johnson and Wales and CIA, I thought that, which are some of the
Mm-hmm.
top colleges for culinary, I knew that I wanted to learn business. So when I had got a scholarship to go to Penn State, I decided to go the academic route because I knew I can always go back to school for the culinary. but sometimes in culinary they don't prepare people on the like on the business side, and it just happens to be that I thrive better on that. I by trade I do have my own event coordinating business, so it still works out. But I love the fact that you are coming from it from a different perspective, because sometimes people in our industry, they're so good at the cooking but don't always understand the business side. So do you find that you run into that, especially with coming with people that have food
Oh,
trucks?
absolutely. I actually run into it from both standpoints. You'll find people that can cook food that's out of this world. That if I could, I would just put a sleeping bag next to their food truck, and every time they open, I'm out here eating something. But they don't necessarily have the business skills to scale. So you have that
Yes.
end. You also have the people that's kind of in the middle. That if they tweak some things, like they're not the best food truck out there, but they're not the worst. And if you work with them on some business techniques, it could really take them to the next level. At the same
Mhm.
time, you also have people that great for business. They probably are using the food truck as a serial entrepreneur venture. Can't cook. Like,
Yeah.
can't cook. Should walk through a kitchen, not stay in it long time, you know,
Yeah.
and they're using the food truck as an avenue. And so I've had to find myself in a position where now I'm in a position to lovingly say to both, if you're a great cook, great chef, here's some business resources to strengthen you. If you got money and you're a great business person but you don't cook, you probably need to find somebody that you can invest in, or maybe you should just walk out of this venture altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something very important for people to realize, because you and the thing is that you don't have to be all the things. Like, I think that that's something that's super important for people to understand, because if you really love to cook, it's probably important, not probably, I would highly recommend getting a coach to at least coach you to a certain point, so that you're making enough revenue so then you can bring someone to either outsource the things that you're not the strongest at, compared to not doing that and just trying to figure it out and not making progress
And
forward.
even, I just want to add to that, even if you can't find a coach per se, one of the things I've talked a lot about on the podcast is find a food truck. There's always food trucks that need someone to work on their truck, even if it's just for a couple of weekends.
Hmm.
Get on that truck to understand how that industry works. You're going to see some things that work really well, and you're going to see some things that don't work well, and you can use that experience for your own business. Sometimes you can find yourself so busy trying to compete with somebody when you really need to be studying them.
Yeah. And but here's the only caveat to it, is that doing that, it works, but you have to make sure the person is running
Yep.
well. Because there's a lot of people in our industry that have been running for a good amount of time, be it if they're restaurants, caterers, food trucks, and they're underpricing, they're not certified, they're all these things, and you can sit there and actually monitor them, and you'll think that they're taking you down the right path. In reality, they are not doing that. So use
And you
discernment.
know, I'm so glad that we talked about pricing, because I think that's something that every business owner at some point struggles with, especially those who are in our community, and more specifically Black
Hmm.
women. I know I myself is something that's I constantly wrestle with is, am I charging too high? Am I too low? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? And that's something that I encourage people to constantly revisit and reevaluate, because you can have a truck that does exceptionally well, but they may realize my prices really aren't where they should be. Like, you're making a lot of money, but you're not making the money that you could make because you're not pricing
Yeah.
properly. And where we are now, still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, where the supply chain has is off the chain right now in terms of just
Yeah.
everything from vegetable oil to the little boats that you put your food in is all astronomical.
Yeah.
Now everyone is having to sit right back at the drawing board and raise their prices, and people have to
Yeah.
understand what goes into the price of a meal more than they ever had before.
Oh yeah. You know what's funny that you say that, because I was even telling some people, I was like, I- some some food businesses may try to rough it out until the end of this year, but I'm like, I'm pretty confident in saying those that want to survive going into 2022, they're going to, I'm like, it's going to be very hard to go in anywhere and eat and think that you're going, except for maybe McDonald's, but we already know what that is. um, but for the normal restaurant, they're going to all have to increase their prices, and it's going to be very hard to go somewhere and think that you're going to spend $13 per person. And I think that I've even on my Instagram page, I've said, stop trying to compete with fast food restaurants. They're not your competitor. Like, even if you're a food truck, you're not buying at the quantity of a large chain. We don't have the relationships to be able to get massively reduced, and it's still not even reduced at this point, but we're not getting these large discounts on our food. So why are you trying to charge $10 for a whole meal? Like, what? Because you have to know how much you have to actually sell to even make a profit at that point. But is it really worth doing more to just make what you could have made doing less with a
And
higher
let me
price?
just say that I get the tension that exists there. So on one
Yeah.
hand, I completely agree with you about if you ever want to see this business grow and scale, you have to be able to price appropriately. And so many times people,
Mhm.
especially small business owners, they underprice. We also have those that overprice too, but still, we still have a lot of people that underprice, and to some extent, I understand why, because there's a concern or a fear that many people, especially those who are in neighborhoods and communities of color, may not have access to really good quality meals if we price them. I know when I talk to a lot of food truck owners, that's one of their main concerns is that they want that 4-star, 5-star dining experience to be in their hood, and they want them to have it accessible at the so it's this strong tension that exists, but at the same time I want them to understand that if you're creating value, you do have to price it, and there's ways that you can do it. Maybe you could partner with a nonprofit that gives a certain percent off in different situations. Maybe it could be a situation where a corporation brings you out, and in turn you're able to use that as scholarships or as free meals or things of that nature. You might have to get creative with how you give and how you have food access, but at the same time I want you to know that if you're always underselling yourself, there may come a time where you may not be in business, and the very mission that you have of providing this quality meal to communities that want to have that experience, you won't be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that, because it's really understanding what your target market and who you're really wanting to serve. And it might be, like you said, the partnership, so that all of your business may not always be serving the community that's at your heart. It might be strategically making partnerships where every now and then, because if we're always sacrificing our business, what happens is then they start feeling jaded, or essentially working themselves to the bone and not really having the business that they dreamed of, because they haven't really analyzed, like, who is my real customer, and how do I actually speak to the people that can afford to pay for my
And if I
services.
can, really quick, one example that I think that was
Sure.
beautiful of, and I hope they're still in operation, is there's a food truck called a Taste of Grace food truck in Atlanta, Georgia. It's actually ran by a church. I believe the church is Elizabeth Baptist
Mm.
Church. I covered them for Cuisine Noir magazine, late 2018, early 2019. And I met them at the Atlanta Food Truck Park, which, if you didn't know, is a black-owned food truck park. It was the first food truck park in Atlanta. It is now is no longer the only food truck park in Atlanta, but is now the first and only strictly vegan and vegetarian food truck park anywhere. Um, so when I met them there, and they was charging people for their food. When I went back around this time, actually in 2018, I met up with them on a Saturday morning to go to the Donna shelter for women and children, where everything that they did was for free. And then later on that day, they went to serve the men that was experiencing homelessness for free as well. So what their model was is through the week, when you catch us, you're paying for those plates. But in actuality, when you catch us on the weekend, we're serving these people who need a free meal, who need to, love and care and concern. Another model is Emoji's Grilled Cheese in Austin, Texas. I think she's retiring this year, Hope Green. But when she started her food truck, and you can hear more about it on my podcast, season 2, um, she hires teenagers that have either foster teens or have experienced homelessness. There's a certain portion of every meal. So she has a breakdown in her menu cost, and she actually posted on her truck to let you know exactly what each penny, from maintenance to payroll to donation to the nonprofit, of where that's going in her meal. So there are ways that you can give back and still remain integral to your prices.
I love that because, and that just takes thinking outside the box. I think that that is really the key, because a lot of the people that I tend to deal with are more private chefs and caterers. And what happens is that I can at times see people complaining that they're not getting paid their worth. And I've actually vented, like, please don't do that on your business page because that's not professional. Because, like, your customer doesn't know. Like, if we ask someone that wasn't in the industry, how much does it cost to cater for 50 people? They're going to throw up all kinds of numbers. They have no clue what it really costs, at all. But I think it's really important for business owners to just understand, like, there's a way to serve your community. Yes. But then it's also understanding how you're going to do so, and being able to really just have clarity on, and I would like to get your perspective on this. I find that there's more disparities in understanding the business side in our community than I'm noticing in other races.
Well, that's getting more to social capital and what we consider, in some scholar circles, intellectual capital. And let me be clear, when I'm saying intellectual capital, I'm not saying that our community isn't as smart as another community. That's not what I'm saying. When we're talking about intellectual capital, we're talking about simply the know-how, the know where to go, the know what to do. I'll give you a prime example. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups, and every time, at least a couple times a month, someone gets in that group that is a scammer and says, "Hey, I'm practicing doing my logo skills. Would love to, do a free logo for your food truck, or I'm gonna do it for $35." And they're not thinking. They're like, "Oh yeah, inbox me," because they think, "Oh, it's cheap. Look, they're showing these different logos." I'm sitting there saying, all of these logos look generic. They're all the same style. You don't know where these logos come from. There's no website that's been shown. This is not how a person would have advertised their logo skills in the first place. These are the things that you should have gotten. Did they offer to give you the source files? Do you have vector files? Like, none of this have they communicated to you, but they don't have the information on what to look for and what to ask. So that is exactly why the podcast exists, and that's exactly why I wrote this new ebook and I'm releasing these courses, is to provide exactly that.
And I think that when I saw that you were going to do the course, I was like, that's amazing, because even when I've spoken to people that are caterers and I've asked them, like, what's your long term? Like, what do you really envision? A lot of people say, I eventually want to do a food truck. I'm like, that's a great transition. If you, one, want to just do a food truck, or two, test out
Market.
your setup and your system before you go into a brick and mortar, because we know if there's not that demand and that following, and if you're just opening up a space without the momentum
Mm-hmm.
pushing into it, that 9 times out of 10 kind of ensures that it don't make it within the 2 years. So you want to make sure that you're having a strategy to roll into a brick and mortar, so that it's not people just finding out about you, but you already have a fan base. And so when I saw that you were going to do that type of course, I'm like, I know that there probably going to be some people that are going to watch this or recording. That's why I titled it make your impossible dreams come true, because this is something that can truly help a lot of people in our community when done correctly to transition to bigger things if that's what they desire.
And first of all, thank you for this platform. One of the biggest things that I want with that course is you're not just going to have me talking. I'm bringing in people that do branding and logos for a living. And they have specifically worked with food trucks to say, okay, this is what you should be looking for in your brand. These are the do's, these are the don'ts. When you get ready to come to someone like me, like, you don't have to go to that person, but they are there. And you'd be like, whether you come to me or someone else, these are some of the questions you should already have thought about when you come to me, so that I can really make your brand as strong as possible. Same thing with building a food truck. I can't tell you how many times I get an inbox saying, hey, how much does it cost to build a truck? That's actually not the question you should ask. It's not. Like, there's so many things that I need to know, and even then, it's really going to be the food truck builder is going to have the best quote for you. But what I can do is, again, provide you with that intellectual capital to give you a list of things that you should have prepared before you talk to that food truck builder.
And that's beautiful, because like there's little things, even when I talk to people that are thinking about doing food trucks, they still haven't even had their proper certifications before they even have a food truck. I'm like, I just need for us, stop trying to be bootleg. Anyone that's watching this recording, please stop trying to be bootleg, because it hurts you at the end of the day. Because the reality is that most businesses in the food industry, they show all of their behind the scenes on their Instagram page. You're showing all the technically illegal activities that you're doing on your Instagram page, because if you don't have a cottage license, if you don't have these certain things, and you're advertising that you're doing these things without having the proper certifications, you're putting all your hard work at risk. And you deserve to have your dreams. And do you find that people still try to cut corners when they have food trucks?
That's across the board.
You're like, she didn't even finish it. She's like, yeah.
Because people are going to people. Even with the food truck building side, we don't have as many regulations on the food truck building industry that we should have. So now you got all these people who do not have no certification at all in doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're putting things on a food truck that's really should go on a house, not on a food truck. And then the food truck goes up in flames. It's because they didn't have someone that was properly certified and trained to really handle that. Even with things, and I know you've seen this, we have a lot of people that are making and selling seasonings, right? But you know, the problem with that is there are some people, I can tell by your face, you're like, Lord, but I got,
when I say stuff, they look at me like I'm being extra, and I'm like, nah, y'all just being illegal.
I gotta speak on it. I gotta speak on it. You got some people that they mix something up in their house. They went to Sam's Club, Gordon's, or whatever, put it in a bottle, and printed out a label, and now they out here selling it. They did not go through, I'm blanking out on the proper term, where you have to take these classes where you have to learn exactly what it's a packer license. I can't think of what it is right now off the top of my head. Oh God, I'm blanking. But you have to be going to those classes where someone actually tests your seasoning. They break down every ingredient that's in it. That when you print out your label, they know exactly what's in it. So if something was to go wrong, like we see recalls all the time about ingredients, they can be able to know, all right, that was in this seasoning, that was in this sauce, we got to pull it off the shelves. If someone gets sick off of your sauce or off of your seasoning because some ingredient went bad, and you can't pinpoint what it was, you can't pinpoint what batch it was in, you can't tell none of that, you are putting your people in livelihood. So those are the things that I really want people to understand. Like, I get the whole get in where you can fit in. Like, I've interviewed so many people with beautiful stories that have done that. If that's your story, the best thing that I can tell you is that I get it. And also do your due diligence. Don't just think that because you have long lines and that you're making money that you can just keep going business as normal. At the same time, you have to do the due diligence to protect your business and your customers. You do owe that to them.
Yes, you said it beautifully because I've even have said to people the reality is that we aren't like anything that goes on a person's body or in their body. Like you may be agitated at the amount of certifications. I get it. I hate having to pay up the amount of insurance as I have to
Mm-hmm.
do as an event coordinator. I get it. But the thing about it is that if something happens, I'd rather have that protection than not have that protection. You rather know that you're doing the right things now because if there's ever anything, like, and I say to people, if someone thinks that they can sue McDonald's for hot coffee, why do you think they won't come after a small business and then take everything that you have? You don't just have a reserve of millions of dollars to pay some lawsuit because someone's child had this spice and then they have a allergic reaction and then something bad happens. This might sound hypothetical, but simple things happen that are not expected and the things that we're intending to put into place is just to really protect your brand. So take heed of
One
this
last
advice.
thing, if it's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Read. Read. Like, if there's anything I can say, please read and not just assume stuff. I got an interview with a doctor that is been gluten free for 14 years, and she talked about how she went to a food truck and asked them, "Is this gluten free?" And it was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Is it gluten free?" Multiple times. Even when she got the ice cream, she's like, "Is this gluten free?" She was like, "They're like, yeah, it's made with so and so." She was like, "That's not gluten free." And people who live gluten free lifestyles, if you take in that gluten, that could really cause a lot of pain and damage to them. That could have been a lawsuit on their hands, advertising something as gluten free when it was not, all because they did not take the time to properly read their labels. So please read and do the due diligence. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it's tedious. But if you're going to serve people, you got to do that.
I agree. This has been an awesome conversation. We're definitely going to have to, because I know we have to keep things
Yep.
within 30 minutes, not because of her, but it's because of the intention spans. Y'all know I love y'all, but I know that I have to do bite-sized pieces for you to be able to stick through. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with them today, Ariel, before we wrap up
Well, I
today?
just want to say, if you ever want to check out any of the resources that we have at all, visit thefoodtruckscholar.com. Right now, we have a checklist of 7 things you should do if you're planning to get your food truck custom built. And honestly, a lot of those points can even work if you're getting a used truck as well, and that is free. So make sure you check that out. We have the ebook that's coming out, 8 questions every food trucker should ask, or every aspiring food trucker should ask. And then, of course, listen to the podcast. There's so many episodes that we have there from people around the country and around the world that have made mistakes so that you don't have to. So take the time. I know attention spans can be short, but take the time to listen while you're meal prepping, while you're taking your kids to school, putting them to bed, or whatever. Take that time to really listen to those stories. I believe it's going to be very beneficial to you. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me to your platform. I'm so grateful to be here.
Oh, thank you so very much. And I'll make sure that I'll have all of her links in the description of this video. And just make sure, like, comment and share this video with anyone that you think that can actually benefit from this recording that has been on the fence about doing a food truck, or maybe you are in the beginning stages and not quite sure about how to go about this. So I will make sure that the links are in the description so that you can reach out to her. I will be back next Friday having another conversation to just give you some more tips on how to grow your food and event business. And thank you so very much. And I hope you have a
Thank
good
you.
one. You're welcome.